Rosal by L.T. Barteck. As I walked up the steps of Rosal, I almost caught my death of fright, because right there before me was something in my sight. The shadow moved before me, something I could not explain, something so strange to me I held my pee, but only in vain. What was it? I whispered to myself. Oh, it's you, my friend. Just don't do that again. Welcome to another episode of This Happened Here. In this episode, we went back to Jamaica and we did have fun with family and friends, eating some good food and traveling around the island. I didn't forget you though. I got you some amazing footage and a ton of stories. I know I say this all the time and I'm usually right, but this time this is going to be a good one. It is a bit long, but believe it or not, this is actually the condensed version. The result being, I will be telling you about the haunted flat bridge, cane farming in Jamaica, the Fern Gully, the Carnival cruise ship, and the famous Rose Hall. And that is only in this episode. In next week's episode, I'll be telling you about the Bank of Jamaica and Devon House, the home of the first black millionaire in Jamaica. I will also take you with me to eat some fish at Old Harbour Bay and take you with me as well to learn about Caymanas Park, the only horse racetrack in Jamaica. So you see, this is going to be packed with a lot of sightseeing videos and some weird, frightening, and interesting stories. So hang in there with me. And subscribe if you haven't yet done so. That way you won't miss next week's video. And if you want to watch the first two videos I did of Jamaica, talking about the food, the music, the heroes, and the artists, and did I mention the food, then just click here. I started this channel to take you with me in my pursuit to find interesting places and stories around the US, Jamaica, and hopefully soon around the world. So if that is something that tickles your fancy, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And like I said before, subscribe so you ride shotgun on all our trips. Go ahead, do it now. Now, the story of Rosal has been told time and time again, but with the help of one of Jamaica's most talented poetess, Alma Norman, as well as my telling of the story, this will make me walking through the Great House really interesting for you. You simply have to stay for that. So my main goal on my first day in Jamaica is to take you with me to Montego Bay, St. James. We will be traveling from St. Catherine, Jamaica, taking the long way around, the old route, not the bypass. We did the bypass last time in the last video we did there, the one where we went to the hotel. Anyway, this time I want to show you more of Jamaica. As we go, I will tell you about the many interesting places that we pass on our journey. Now, to cut down on the length of this video, I have been forced to delete a lot of footage from the telling of it here. That hurt, but I will put some of those deleted footage at the end of the video for those who want to see a little bit more of the island. First, we will talk about the flat bridge because this is the first major location we came across on our journey. Flat Bridge is one of the oldest bridges in Jamaica. It was built by slaves sometime in the 1700s. It gives access across the 35-mile-long Rio Cobre River, which runs all the way from Port Maria in the parish of St. Mary through to Kingston Harbor and to the Caribbean Sea. The name Rio Cobre is a Spanish-Portuguese name that means copper river. Copper is one of the minerals Jamaica is rich in. The name was given by the Spanish during their 100 years of colonization. The flat bridge connects Kingston, St. Catherine, and other southern parishes to the north, mainly Ocho Rios, St. Anne, where the Duns River Falls is located, and Montego Bay, St. James. The flat bridge is one of the most dangerous bridges in Jamaica. I really can't see why. I've driven it many, many times. It may be a one-lane bridge without railings, but it can be safe if driven safely, especially if people obey the traffic lights and don't speed. Some Jamaicans claim that the bridge is haunted because of the spirits of the many slaves who died there in the construction back in the 1700s, and the mermaid who lives there with her insatiable need for blood every year. And that is why they say there are so many accidents. It is said that when the river turns a deep green, that is when the call for blood is at its strongest. The river is said to be as deep as 30 feet in some areas, while near the shoreline it's said to be about 10 feet. During the period of 1881 to 1915, the floor of the bridge was washed away and then reconstructed using iron girders and buckle plates, which were salvaged from the original flooring of the Maypen Bridge. At present, the bridge consists of 3 spans that are supported by 2 piers and 2 abutments. In the 1930s, metal handrails were installed on the bridge, but these were later replaced with wooden ones. However, over time, the river eroded and destroyed the wooden handrails. Currently, the only protective feature on the bridge are semicircular spires. Before the stoplight was put in place in the 1900s, a lot of the accidents were because drivers, mostly bus drivers, tried to beat other vehicles across the bridge, or in one case, a passenger vehicle was trying to beat another in getting to passengers first, and in its haste, had driven off the bridge. The conductor of the bus tried and saved 4 of the 8 passengers and then went back to save the collected fares, but he drowned in the process. Some of the accidents happened due to reckless driving even before reaching the flat bridge. In another case, due to speeding, another passenger vehicle plunged into the river, killing 1 woman and injuring 13 others. The passenger vehicle, aka minibus, was heading towards Linstead when it collided with this black station wagon. The collision sent the bus into the river. People in the vicinity rescued the passengers but were not able to save the woman. I must point out that, like lifeguards, these rescuers try to stay in the area just in case they are called on to save the lives of the ones who get trapped in their vehicles due to accidental occurrences. They should be praised for their efforts. In another incident at about 1 a.m. or about on September 26, 2021, a 27-year-old woman died when she was trapped in a car that sank in the Riocopa River. The driver of the car was a male. He was taken from the vehicle, but rescuers who heard the loud splash and had come running were unable to save the woman. The car was coming in the direction of Ocho Rios. 3 men died in another incident on the flat bridge. They were dead on impact. Dead were a 45-year-old father, his 18-year-old son, and another male passenger aged 25. On July 6, 6 people died in another incident on that flat bridge when the SUV that they were in plunged into the river. The news has it that the driver of the vehicle overtook a truck on the amber, but the light had turned to red, and in his haste to get to the other side before the oncoming traffic, had lost control of his vehicle and ran off the bridge. Another story about the bridge is it is said that a golden table repeatedly surfaces in a spot in the river between Angels and the River Dam. Clinton Black, in his Tale of Old Jamaica, records the story of the 24 steers and 6 screaming slaves who were dragged under the water at that spot as they tried to harness the legendary table on the instruction of a plantation owner. It is also said that the mermaid, in her insatiable need for blood, caused accidents to happen, and when these people are in the water, she pulls them down as her sacrifice. But that is just stories. Anyway, as I said before, some people say this bridge is haunted. I am not sure about that. I just think Jamaicans need to slow way down with the speed at which I see them drive. I was a little annoyed at first when we got stuck behind this cane truck, but then I realized that this is actually a blessing in disguise, because this way I can tell you about one of Jamaica's top export earners, sugar, and about cane farming in Jamaica. As you can see, this truck is laden with cut cane as it drives to Worthy Park Estate Limited, located in Newarton, St. Catherine, after being harvested. For those interested, this is how the cane is harvested and processed in Jamaica. Between February and April, when the cane is at its sweetest, the cane field is set ablaze to minimize the bugs and help to strip the leaves from around the cane, so that it can be cut without much hindrance. The cane farm workers chop the cane and strip away any leaves from it, and then the cane is loaded into the back of a truck via crane in some cases. Then the truck takes it to the processing factory so that we get stuck behind it. Anyway, the cane then gets crushed, taking all the sweet juices from them. The juice then gets boiled with precision, and after several steps it turns into sugar or is left wet. The wet sugar is what is called molasses. The steps are called clarified, concentrated, and crystallized. The crystals are then spun in a centrifuge to remove the liquid and produce nice dark brown raw sugar. The trash or remnants of the cane is compressed to make bagasse board, something like particle board. The thing is, nothing gets wasted in the processing of cane. The juice is also produced into the famous Jamaican rum, or the Tia Maria, which we talked about last time. Cane is a product that also makes a nice snack. It is sold on the street sides of Jamaica, and eating it strengthens your teeth, they say, and the remains after juicing it out can be used to brush your teeth. I used to do that as a child. I love cane and find it even here in rural Tennessee. It has been suggested that sugar cane was first cultivated over 2,000 years ago in the Caribbean. It was introduced by Christopher Columbus around the late 15th century. Rum was an alternative income for the estates to sugar. The sugar industry is the oldest continually operating industry in Jamaica, generating the third largest foreign exchange earnings after tourism and bauxite. The name rum might have derived from one possible derivation, because rum is a byproduct of sugar, and the Latin word for sugar is saccharum. And because rum comes after sugar is processed, they just call the byproduct rum. Hey, I'm just spitballing here if you could follow my train of thought, but we may never know, or if you do, tell us about it. Appleton Estate Jamaica Rum is another processing sugarcane plant. It dates back to 1749 and is said to be the world's second oldest spirit manufacturing plant. Their website states that rain falls every day at 2:30 p.m. Wish I'd gone to see that. J. Ray and Nephew Company Limited, the largest producer and bottler of rum and spirits in Jamaica, began in 1825 when John Ray opened the Shakespeare Tavern on the north side of the city square in downtown Kingston. The partnership with Charles Ward, his nephew, began in 1862. Ray and nephew and the Appleton Estate and Distillery were linked in 1917 when Ray and nephew was purchased by the Linda Brothers Company, whom the previous year had bought the Appleton Estates. They continued using the Ray and nephew brand name, and in 1996 the company was reported to have exported over US $20 million worth of products. Next, we entered the Fern Gully. It is called Fern Gully because over 300 varieties of ferns exist there, along with the blue maho tree. I always loved driving through Fern Gully, but over the years most of the ferns have died out. But you can still see some as we zip through its 3-mile winding once riverbed route to Ocho Rios. This roadway was formed back in 1907 when a massive earthquake diverted one of the 8 rivers flowing through the Ocho Rios area. Having this already almost paved direct route from Colgate to Ocho Rios through the forest, the government paved it, turning it into what we now know as the Fern Gully. As we drive through, you can see vendors selling lots of Jamaican souvenirs and other goodies. However, one needs to be very careful because during periods of heavy rain, the road turns back into the river it once was. Before I move on to the next topic, stop for a second and take a look at how the Jamaicans drive bad. One truck broke down on the road, and this trailer was trying to pass on the narrow road with the cliff right next to it. But some cars were still forcing to get by. Dang. Hats off to that driver though. Driving through Ocho Rios on our way, as I said before, to Annie Palmer's great house, we got a glimpse of the carnival sunrise. And for those of you who don't know, Jamaica is one of the destinations on their 5-day Western Caribbean cruise. For those of us in the south, we can get on board in Miami and sail to Ocho Rios, and then the ship goes to Grand Cayman and then back to Miami. As you can see, this seemed to be a fun cruise and the prices are not too bad in my opinion. Carnival Sunrise was formerly named Carnival Triumph. However, the vessel received a makeover in 2019 and was renamed Carnival Sunrise. The Carnival Sunrise weighs 101,509 gross tons. It has a guest capacity of 2,984. It is 893 feet long and has 1,108 crew members. While on board, there are musical stage shows, stand-up comedy, the piano bar, a water slide, a barbecue smokehouse, and lots more. Plus, the children have their youth space where they can have age-appropriate fun. Anyway, based on what we saw of the ship and what I have now found out about it, it seems like it would be a fun experience. I think we should have at least one cruise experience. So let's get on that or think about it, right, CB? CB? Why are you walking away? Huh? Wow, he moved fast. Maybe he has to use the bathroom. I will ask him again when he gets back. As we drove through the parish of St. Anne, looking at both the dilapidated and some ginormous houses, we couldn't help but wonder about this. Who lives in these homes and what do they do for a living? I didn't see many factories or businesses, but I was told that a lot of returning residents are going back home and building their dream homes there. Good for them. Anyway, having spent 1 hour, I kid you not, at KFC waiting for our order in Ocho Rios, we were racing to get to Rose Hall before it closed, and thank heavens we did. Now for the story of Annie Palmer and Rose Hall. Point to note, after doing some research, it is being said that the story of Annie Palmer is not true. But I will not get into all of that because I'm still fascinated by the story, even if it's not true. So I will expound on it and put my take on it as usual. You know me. So walk with us as we go through the 273-year-old house and look around at what they claim to have once been the residence of Annie Palmer, aka the White Witch of Rosal. As usual, I'll tell the story of how I saw it playing out in my mind and tell the story of the death of her 3 husbands as it has been told throughout the decades. The Rosal Great House fell into abandoned ruins and was later restored in 1977 by Michelle and John Rollins, who restored it into the tourist attraction it is today. I was a little disappointed because only half of the house is original and most of the furniture is also not original, but was taken from surrounding estates to furnish the rebuilt section of the house. The tour guide was gracious and very patient and allowed us to learn and walk without haste throughout the house, providing more information than we needed. This story came to me as I looked out the view from what is called Annie Palmer's bedroom, and I imagined that if this story was true, this is what it would be like for her. Usually at this point, I would follow by saying that I will be using the facts to tell the story, but now I'm not sure of that. Anyway, here goes. Annie Palmer stood at her bedroom window looking out at the beautiful sea and at the hundreds of acres of cane land located here in Montego Bay in the parish of St. James, Jamaica. At its peak, this was a 6,521-acre property and had more than 2,000 slaves. The house was built from 1778 to 1790 by John Palmer. She watched as the sea sparkled in the sunlight, seeing the blue water darken as it stretched out towards the ever so straight line of the horizon. With a view like this, she should have been at peace, but she wasn't. She hated it here. Her days were filled with fears of the slaves, and people around her frightened her, and every night was filled with nightmares. They hated who she was, calling her the White Witch of Rosal, saying that she was an Obia woman, the Jamaican name for voodoo woman. She heard the whispers and had killed quite a number of slaves for it, and she wished she could kill all of those who hated her, but who would work the fields? And people might start confirming the evil she carried within her soul and bring her to justice for also killing her husbands. Her assuming childlike features and standing at only 4 feet 11 inches had caused them not to fear her at first, but she made sure that changed with the first beatings and hangings. She had tried to find love from both the white man and the black slaves, but they had only become a nuisance after a few visits, so they had to go. She had her way of getting rid of her white lovers without suspicion, and no one would dare question her about missing slaves. But what she was looking for was something that she would not recognize even if it slapped her in her face, because at the age of 10 years old, both her parents had died from yellow fever. They were merchants and were hardly around to show her love anyway. She remembered having to grow up in Haiti with her nanny, the voodoo priestess, who taught her the art of the occult, but there was no room for the affection called love. Once her nanny had told her that love was something she should never talk about, let alone allow to enter her heart, because that would make her seem weak and make her vulnerable. Before her nanny died, she told her this world was no place for a woman on her own. So after her nanny died, she packed up everything she owned and sailed to Jamaica. Even after marriage, she never experienced love. She had only married out of convenience. They wanted this beautiful, tiny lady, and she wanted companionship and security. She had built a wall around her heart, never letting anyone in, so nothing and no one could hurt her. There were times when she thought she wanted children, but that didn't happen for her, and she made do with that. She sighed and dragged her gaze away from the view that always somehow held her in its tight grip and strolled towards her sewing room. She pulled up her half-finished embroidery and began stitching the rest of the red rose she had started days before. She reflected on her life and sighed deeply. She remembered coming to Jamaica on March 28, 1820. She was only 18 years old and had married the Honorable John Rose Palmer. She had found one of the slaves quite attractive and began taking him to bed. But when her husband found out about him, he had whipped her like a slave, and later that night she killed him by placing poison in his coffee. Then she had to get rid of her slave lover, fearing he would blackmail her. She had him gagged and beaten to death. That took care of that, she said to no one. But to be alone and lonely was not something she could cope with. So she took other slave lovers, but as soon as she got tired of them, she told lies about them and had them killed as well. She encouraged the advances of her second husband. Then he too, an awful man, tried to get in the way of her fun, so he too had to go. Her lover Taku took care of that. Well, he tried to. Him being a slave, stabbing a white man to death was something that his very being fought against. So when her husband didn't die from the stab wounds, she had to take matters in her own hands and had to finish him off by pouring boiling hot water in his ears. She smiled to herself, remembering how that had done the trick. She had held off for a bit. She did not take another husband to bed, but she did continue to take a few of the strong black slaves, and out of fear for them talking when she was done with them, she had them killed as well. She did what she had to do, even resorting to telling lies about them, so they would be hanged or whipped to death. Eventually, she needed to be a respectable lady, and so she had to take a third husband to Rosal, but she had gotten bored of him, just like the last two, and had Taku strangle him. He got the job done this time. She felt the presence of someone behind her and turned to see one of the housemaids throwing white sheets over her darling pieces of furniture. "How dare you do that while I'm sitting here? Get out!" Annie screamed, but the maid kept on opening the sheets and throwing them over the rest of her chairs. "Do you hear me?" she screamed again, but the maid kept on ignoring her and continued to prepare the place for desertion. Annie threw her work down on the floor and moved over to slap the rude maid across her face, but her hand went through the woman. Confused, she stopped to look down at her hands. She tried again to push the woman from behind, but this time she fell through and landed on the floor. "What is happening to me?" she screamed, but no one could hear her, because she had been strangled by Taku, her slave lover, over a week ago. She looked around, really seeing the place. Dust had gathered on the uncovered furniture. The window she had been standing at a few minutes ago, as well as all the other windows, were now sealed shut. It didn't happen in the few minutes she had been seated, so it must have happened some time before. With hesitant steps, she walked over to the last uncovered mirror. But there was no reflection. The realization hit her. She was dead. Annie fell to her knees and sobbed. Even to this day, she sobs. While in primary school in Jamaica, we entered the speech festival with this poem about Annie Palmer. We got a silver medal for our performance. It was a brute trying to find this poem, though, but with the effort of my little sister, I got it. Thanks, little sister. I will now recite the poem, The Curse of Rosal, by Alma Norman, as we finish up our tour of Rosal. The Curse of Rose Hall by Alma Norman, a Jamaican poetess. Darkness hangs thick on the haunted air, and a ghostly jury in session there lays Annie Palmer's foul deeds bare in the ruined rooms of Rose Hall. Oh, white in the daylight the stone walls gleam, and gracious and spacious the vast rooms seem, and the poisons and murderings all a dream, and the frightened ghosts of Rose Hall. But on moonless evenings when Patu calls, and no clear brightness from heaven falls, then into the ruins of splendid halls slink the vengeful ghosts of Rose Hall. Up from the cellars and nameless graves slouch husbands and lovers and strong black slaves, and she looks in vain for the face that saves, but each wants revenge for Rose Hall. The deadly evidence toil its bell as one by one the victims tell of how they lived in that witch's hell with the wicked queen of Rose Hall. Proud Annie hears what they tell about, and she savagely tries to curse them out, but nobody there can hear her shout, for all are dead at Rose Hall. With fury she listens to their tale, and not for repentance does she pale, but to know that her obeah could fail and bring her death at Rose Hall. When the last of the shuddering victims spoke, the jury its ghostly silence broke, and bound the white witch with a fearful yoke to the ruined stones of Rose Hall. Now on secret nights when the sky is blind, and Patu mocks what his sharp eyes find, you can hear Annie's bitter sobs behind the crumbling walls of Rose Hall. Well, that is that, folks. Thank you for making it this far. I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of what I believe is going to be a 2 to 3 part episode. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and do subscribe for the continuation of my visit to Jamaica for the second time. Thanks again for watching. Oh wait, remember, before you go, we have some bonus footage. Enjoy. Stay safe, love yourself and others, and I will catch you on the next one. Love you. Bye.